Welcome to Table Talks with Kaya and Aubrey.
Desk combos with Kaya and Aubrey.
Would be really nice if we had a couch.
Comfy conversations.
Yeah, comfy couch with Kaya and Aubrey.
Aww.
Or Aubrey and Kaya. Either way. We're so excited to be here today, and we've been talking about what we want to share, and we want to tell you our story.
Where it all began.
Where it all began, because we feel like that the two of us kind of represent where Professional Photographers of America, we'll say that shorthand, PPA, is today. Because I am almost 50 and I've been in the industry for almost 30 years, and my very first event that I went to was a PPA local Kansas event, and that's how I learned about photography.
Yeah, and I'm almost 30 in a few months here. And I've been in the industry 12 years, and my first event also was affiliated with PPA. So we've been in it. Yeah,
we have. And there are things that have happened in our businesses that I feel like really kind of speak to a lot of different people.
Yeah.
We've each had our own personal businesses. I've worked with family. I've had a huge business, small business, been out of a garage for a while, and now we're in this beautiful studio.
Yeah.
And it's really fun to be here.
Yeah.
Aubrey, I think you should start, because if we're talking about the story of like our connection, I think it starts with you, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Kaya and I actually attended the same church. So whenever I was, 10, 11, 12, I paid a lot of attention to Kaya. I saw her and admired her, the way she was a mom and ran a business and was an entrepreneur. So I would actually follow her anywhere I could. Instagram at the time wasn't that big.
Yeah.
So I would be Googling her and seeing what she was up to, and I knew she was one of the top photographers in the nation at the time. And she had a profitable studio. A woman who had one of the biggest studios in America, that's attractive. That was cool. And she dressed cool, so I looked up to her. And I knew I wanted her to do my senior portraits.
Yeah. And so you came and did a meeting at our studio to be a model. And I was super excited because I had been seeing you walking into church, and you had really curly hair at the time, and it was all up in a bun. And I was like, oh, this girl is super cute. And so I was excited about that, but something happened.
Yeah. So my dad got really sick. Mm-hmm. I grew up with him being pretty sick, but it just went downhill. And he was spending more time in the hospital than not, and I'm one of 5. And I took care of my family a lot of the time. So it didn't feel right to make that decision financially, because it did cost money. Mm-hmm. And I knew that, and I respected that. But I also was really worried about pulling out from a commitment I had made to get my senior portraits taken. So I called Kaya, told her the situation, and she understood.
Well, it's really unusual for a high school senior to call and say, hey, this is what's happening. I feel bad. I wish I could keep my commitment. And I was very impressed at the time.
Yeah.
So then at that time, I had been in a family business for almost 15 years, and it was wonderful. I loved that experience. But my husband took a new job up in the city. And so I was transitioning, and I was really just shooting for myself in the middle of something. Like I didn't really have a business that I had built. I was just kind of in limbo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had been asked to speak at an event, and they asked me to do some sample shooting here in Kansas City. So I contacted Aubrey, and we weren't friends or anything. We just were acquaintances, had seen each other, and asked her to be my model for the event. And so you came and modeled.
At an after dark event, and I show up. It was my first time driving downtown. On the highway, I got a little bit lost. It was a little bit of a mess. But that day changed my life. It changed the trajectory of my life, and it made an impact. A couple of things happened. I felt beautiful for the first time. and I felt seen, but I also felt like this is it. This is what I want to do with my life. And it wasn't so much about being in front of the camera or behind the camera. It was being a part of making a difference, being a powerful woman that takes care of other people, and then also being a creative. Like, I knew after that day, I was like, this is it. So I actually reached out to Kai. I was like, we gotta get coffee. So we met at Starbucks, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I opened with the line, I'm going to work for you.
Yes, you did.
And she goes, you can't, I don't even have a studio right now. I'm in limbo. I can't even pay you. And my next response was, okay, great, I'll work for free. I don't care. This is what I want to do. And I knew, I just knew.
And you definitely didn't work for free, because that's against the law. So
it's true.
But she worked for pretty cheap for a little while as we kind of got going. And so there was this transition where I was building up a whole new business. I had moved.
Yeah.
And so Aubrey started out from the ground up, sweeping, babysitting, not babysitting
Painting
my
backgrounds.
kids, painting lots of things,
Yeah.
assisting, holding reflectors. And that's where it started. And I think when people see our relationship now and see what you do, that you're a photographer, you are a decision maker, you have your own businesses, we have businesses that we do together, you know, with our education and podcasts and that type of thing. They're like, how did you get this? You know, how did, and I think the big thing for me is that, you know, there was something inside of you that, you know, from the very beginning, there was this baseline of integrity. You know, where you were honest from the get-go, and we're like, this is the situation. And there, I think for both of us, is just a culture of honor. You know, like, I'm never going to belittle you, and I want you to become whatever you want to become. And you have always been like, hey, what do you want in your life? I know you've done so much and created so much, so, you know, you deserve to do this now.
Yeah.
And kind of helping me see that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're 12 years in.
Yeah.
And we both kind of do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
We're here in a studio, a beautiful studio, and we are in Shawnee, Kansas, outside of Kansas City.
Yes, yeah. And so that was one thing that was kind of funny, is you actually lived in Shawnee, or almost in Shawnee, before we chose to move up here. And I had been scouting locations. And so my husband took a job, and we were trying to figure out where to live. And we actually, I scouted locations, and we actually found the studio and then rented a house for a while until we found a house that was where we wanted. So the studio was really, for me, the first place. And I was looking for an area that was older, so that there were old junky buildings around us. And so it was where we'd be able to shoot, and, you know, it wasn't like so fancy and so high end that people were, you know, shooing us out of places, but people would think it was exciting and nice for us to go to their little old barn, or in their yard, or that type of thing. Yeah. But our building is a new build, and I was actually nervous about it. Like, what am I going to do with a new place? You know, because it wasn't built out specifically for photography. But yeah, so we ended up here, and our clients are so comfortable coming here.
Yeah, you know, it's in a great little spot. It's not quite downtown. We live in a fairly large city of Kansas City, and we're about 10 minutes from downtown. So, and we're off the main road, so it's easy for clients to park. But then we really created and envisioned what we wanted the studio to be like. So over the past really 8 years, I mean, every year we're fixing up the studio, or changing it, or adding new trim, or adding another window, whatever it may be, to make the space what we need it to be, because adding in character can be hard.
It's so true. Yeah, and so before we moved up here, when I was started on my own for a little while, I was in a garage. That's where we were shooting then, and it was just a couple $100s a month. And when we moved here, then we just rented half of the building. And so whenever I make a decision on like a big purchase, and we talk about this together a lot, like, okay, should we hire someone else? Should we make a commitment to something? We talk about, how are we going to budget it? How are we going to plan it? And so for me, I always look at either what revenue is coming in, you know, like if we're in the middle of our busy season, I know a certain amount's going to come in per month, or I look at what savings I have, because I don't want to make a commitment and not be able to cover it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that is one thing that I do, is I do all our books, but Aubrey and I talk about all of it. And
Yeah.
so she has a really good picture of where we are with our clients.
Yeah, definitely.
So we mentioned our clients coming here. And so I think that's something that we've communicated quite a bit about, like, who is our ideal client? What, like, because it's changing over time.
Yeah.
Because we're in a small town, it feels like a small town, but it's just part of Kansas City. But all of our clients are really comfortable coming here. It's not scary. It's not, it's not too fancy. So
Yeah.
But what would you say, like, when you describe our ideal client? Would it
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think where we're located is a big part of that. The school districts are fantastic. There is some money. They can afford to purchase our
You
product.
don't want to take pictures of someone if they can't afford them and then they're sad. And that's not fun.
And I know over the years I've kind of joked. I'm like, every business has the choice to be either, you can be a Walmart of the industry or you can be Gucci of the industry. And thankfully, we have a lot of high-end people that live in Kansas City, and we have access to that upper 5 to 1% of America. And so marketing to them and getting them in, they're the ones who value high-end art for their walls. And not to say that the middle class isn't our clientele either, but we're definitely serving a lot of that upper class.
Yeah, I do feel like I have talked to friends who they work with the lower middle class and the lower class, and they get great sales, and it's like this amazing experience for their clients. But that's really not where we're at. We're wanting to make it a pretty easy transition. And if they, so we're looking at what kind of cars they're driving, how they're dressing, who they're following on social media, so that we know that they're a fit for who our clients are. Yeah.
And then emulating the high-end experience for them that they want everywhere they go. They're not going to those just casual restaurants. They're going and having nice experiences and high-end experiences everywhere they go. So that's what we're trying to make happen here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Kaya, I've told you and everybody else how I got into it. So tell us how you got into it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I have a secondary Spanish and elementary ed teaching degrees. And so when my husband and I got married, he was like, you actually need to get a degree. So I did that, and I did not want to teach. And so I started working with my mom. She had just started a photography studio. And it was really fun. I loved it so much that I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. And I loved everything about the business. Don't you feel like for you, like whether you're framing or sales or retouching?
Well, maybe not framing.
Okay.
Everything else.
Yeah. I just loved it. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to spend my time doing. And so I went to a week-long class in Kansas with Larry Peters, and I learned how to be a photographer. And I came back and started photographing high school seniors, and that was kind of the beginning. So I worked for 15 years in a family business. I was an owner there. And then when my husband got the job and we moved up here, and you came along, it was really interesting because I had so many employees over that time. Lots of people who had worked for me, and family members, and different people. And a lot of them I had even trained photographers at the time. A lot of them had said, I want to be a photographer. And I had trained them, and none of them were working with me anymore. They were all great people. So when you came to me and said, I want to be a photographer, I was like, we'll see.
Yeah.
I definitely was. I was like, well, we'll see. We'll see if you have it in you. And I think that the fun part looking back at it now is that each time, because we normally have a meeting once a year.
A big one.
Yeah. We talk all the time, but we have a meeting once a year, and we both talk about what our goals are.
Yeah.
So I would always be like, okay, Aubrey, what do you want to do? What's your goal next year? Because I was just super open-handed. By having been in the business 15 years, I was like, I don't care whether I have a big business or not. I want to just have my time. I want to have my space in life. And so I loved it because you would come and have these goals.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. You'd be like, I want to learn to do this year, or I think we should photograph more high school seniors, or I want to learn to retouch, or I think, and you would have all these ideas and goals for yourself. And I just loved that because for me, it was energy that I didn't have at the time.
Yeah.
You know, because we all, I feel like if you're in business for a really long time, your energy goes up and down. And so, yeah, that was really good for me.
Yeah, I remember thinking to myself, if this is going to last, I have to make myself valuable.
Yeah.
And even at the time, like kind of strategically thinking through what you didn't like.
Yeah,
You're
that's
like,
true.
okay, Kai's complaining a lot about retouching. If I can be the best retoucher, I'm going to be valuable. She'll need me,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
Well, and I think it kind of like there's a teeter-totter effect, right? So
Yeah.
for a while there, you were like, how do I make myself valuable? You know,
Yep.
you were really working on that. And I was so exhausted from having worked so many hours holding cameras, cameras, retouching, that my body was like I was just tired.
It's true. Yeah, you were
we know.
exhausted.
Yeah,
You were.
And I mean, for photographers, when we're really hitting it hard, it is hard, and we know
Yeah.
that. But then the pendulum, the teeter-totter has tipped, where now I know your value, and so then I'm like, okay, what can the situation be like so that you feel like you're growing, that you're getting your goals, you're able to open up? Because I know, when I used to have my other business, one of our rules was that people couldn't have other businesses. They couldn't create other things. They had to be only focused on what we did. And there were reasons for that, but that's not what we're doing at this point.
Yeah. All right. So we walk in the studio.
Yes. Well, so here's what I think when we talk about day to day that's so important is that I am a person who loves to fly by the seat of my pants. Like if it's an open day, anything can happen and it could be wonderful. But you are the opposite, right?
Yeah, very. I have a morning routine that I follow every day. I plan out my day the night before, and I plan out a lot of studio stuff like in advance. Like this week, we're gonna do this, this, and this, and we need to have this amount of clients done, and then by the end of the month we need to see these goals reached, as do you. It goes both ways. Yeah. But I live by a plan.
I have to tell you, in the morning, if we're in the same place and we get up, alarm after alarm after alarm goes off.
But they're
right?
not to wake up. They're not to wake
I'm
up.
like, what are we doing next? What are we doing? So I've been trying, but then when I put an alarm on, then
but they're alarms to remind me. It's like, okay, now it's time for the next thing. Now it's the next thing, and so it's to keep me on track. That's what the alarms are for.
And they work.
They
you
do.
are very much on track. So when you come in, sometimes you come in before me, but what would be a typical day?
Typically, I would come in, I would sit down at the desk, look through client folders online and just kind of see where we're at, and look at my notes that I made and see who needs to be retouched, if that's what I'm doing that day, or who's coming in, and I kind of just mentally prepare. And usually I do like to come a little bit before Kaya gets in, so that way it can just be quiet and I can think.
Sometimes I surprise you and come in early, but sometimes not. Yeah, and so when I come in, I typically, right now actually, it's so funny because things change. I'm doing all of the client intake. So I'm doing the emails and checking everyone, putting them in spreadsheets so that we can take care of all of our inquiries. And then I do the production of everyone. So I send them to the lab, and then we split the photo shoots. So it just kind of depends. And then we discuss what's happening in the day, and then we sit and work, or we go and
we
shoot.
spend a lot of time next to each other on the computers.
And we really like it. And if anyone else is in there, they drive us crazy. So we send them home.
Where we send them to the other room to work.
Yeah.
Is the trash being taken out?
That's our favorite question. For some reason, it's never taken out, no matter what, even if we ask. Yeah, so for us, a typical day is like 9 to 4.
Yeah.
Now, it's 2:30 right now because I'm picking my son up from soccer.
For you, yeah.
And so, and we typically work Tuesday through Friday. So, yeah, that's a typical day in the life, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Retouching, a photo shoot or two. Yeah.
So, Aubrey, when we're thinking about like other photographers that are listening and like, what we're wanting to tell them, because I feel like there's kind of a thread here. Like, we're not killing ourselves working 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. 6 days a week or 7 days a week. We haven't let the business be in charge.
No. And that's been really important to both of us, that we love what we do, but that we also take control of our lives and our schedule, and that we create a business that works with that. So we're not in here slaving away on Saturday and Sunday. You know, we both value going to church or whatever it is, or being with friends and family on the weekends, and keeping that a priority has been really important to both of us.
Yes, yeah. I think, you know, for photographers that are, you know, trying to figure out what to do in their life, and I feel like we all hit that point. You know, we're all like, okay, wait a minute, things aren't working, this isn't right. Is just that it can be successful anyway, you know? And the most important part is just who we are right now and what we need, and then just making a plan to get there.
Yep.
When we first started talking about this, we were talking about how each of us represent who PPA is, you know, and so I represent the old people, and you represent, and so, you know, that would definitely be my advice, is that you don't have to get out of this business. You can just keep it changing and make it work for your life and who you are at that time. But what advice would you have for the people that you...
Yeah, especially new photographers that are starting, or even older ones. I think it's so important that if you really love this, you make it work. And you become the CEO, entrepreneur, business person that your brand needs you to be. As photographers, it's so easy to get caught up in the fact that we're artists. And some of us are moody, and some of us feel all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, if we aren't the business person that our business needs us to be, we have nothing. And to keep this going, we have to value all of it. And so, you know, if you're new in this, and maybe this is one of the first bits of education you're watching, deep dive into all of it. Become the best photographer, become the best at selling products and doing your books and getting your price list right. Do all the parts.
Yeah, so that you can be the best photographer that you can be.
And then you can own your life.
You can own your life. And then when your client walks in the door, you can look at them and only worry about them and only care about them. So then you can create the best imagery, the best art that you can create.
Yes.
Because if you don't have your life in order and you're unhappy and frustrated, then you're not going to be able to create the best art.
So true.
The best photography. Yeah.